Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the City Council special meeting and work session of Tuesday, October 8th. Call the meeting to order and ask for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have public comment. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to make public comment for anything other than the public hearing, please raise your hand and we'll call on you when you're at the podium. State your name and mailing address and keep your comments kind and respectful and under 3 minutes. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make public comment? Michelle? Is that you? Okay.
Sorry. At the end of the cold. Oh, your name's up here.
It's for the.
Oh, okay. Hi, Michelle Valagura, P.O. Box 719, I'm at the end of the cold. All good. Okay, this is all said with respect and reverence to understanding how difficult this position is. I appreciate all of you and your work from the bottom of my heart. First, I'm saying this as one of the committee members that serves on the DRB. Back in March 2023, I came before you with a plea of taking into consideration each of the committees that serve under you. To take a quote from myself, I do believe strongly in this process. I love and respect being a public servant. I believe firmly in acting locally and thinking globally. I would not waste my time extensively researching the code or investigating other examples that we could possibly learn from and emulate. That said, I feel something has broken down in the system here. I don't even have to watch a council meeting now to know that 99% of every decision that DRB has made will be overturned. I don't understand how this has happened. It's non-functional. It's not how the system is designed. You're not the Supreme Court. I feel the citizens have noticed that the disregard of the committees. I do feel like it's a lot easier to poo-poo DRB because we aren't stacked with lawyers like planning is. I'm a professional designer and an artist. I'm on this committee for my experience. I'm also okay with being wrong or disagreeing. I can see your side a good amount of the time. That said, now I'm speaking as a citizen and not a DRB member. I'm currently heartbroken, yes, heartbroken, by watching the current construction of the 2 gender restrooms. We have had an opportunity to be progressive and inclusive and show the world we welcome all people, no matter race, religion, sexual identity, etc., etc. I stand before you as a marginalized person. In 2008, I voted for a president that told me I didn't have the same rights to marry as a man and a woman do. Yet I believed that was a vote for greater good. While I identify as a woman, I respect the rest of the LGBT plus community that does not fit into gender norms as you are so used to. I feel we lost a beautiful opportunity to show how thoughtful and progressive our community could be. I 100% am fully disappointed in the council for not seeing this and ignoring my plea. You may think I'm being dramatic about a simple public restroom, but a basic human right should never have a cloud of fear around it. The fact we are building a cookie cutter bathroom from the design from the 80s is embarrassing at best. I'm so saddened to see the construction every single day as I leave my apartment and go to work. After all the discussion about the gender neutral bathroom, why was it not included? Who made this choice and why is it made out of public view? I'm hoping that you'll be more thoughtful in future endeavors. And once again, thank you for your time. I do appreciate the immense amount of work that it is. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Is there anyone on Zoom? If you would raise your hand, please.
Yeah, Anita Duber.
Okay, Anita?
Hello, everyone. Anita Duber, P.O. Box 694, Cannon Beach. And I was just wondering on my walkings, I'm seeing a lot more outdoor merchandising, sandwich boards, internally lit lights, sound systems that you can hear down the street. And we have ordinances about those issues, and they don't seem to be being enforced. And I'm just wondering, is it because those ordinances are going to be phased out, or Are they just not important enough to enforce anymore? Being told to fill out a complaint form really doesn't do much good from experience. But sorry I don't have my video on, but I am smiling, and thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Anita. Is there anyone else on Zoom? Anyone else in the audience?
Yeah, I'm in PO Box 4. 942?
942.
And that is not what I was gonna say. Madam Mayor, councilors, Anita brings up some good points, and I wasn't gonna say anything tonight, but across the way over where the Bahama Surf Shop is, there's an outside eating venue there. And I don't know how they've been allowed to keep that open. All of the public seating was taken away after COVID. And how they could have just, barbecues, serving hot dogs. Are they collecting food tax? So I've had a lot of people come to me, and through summer, I maybe didn't notice, but it looks awful and probably isn't in the best interest of the other communities that do all of their due diligence. I did file a complaint. Maybe that was a week or two ago now, and I have not heard anything back. So it is truly, the signage over there is bad. I mean, there's just some things that it is concerning. So just kind of mirroring what Anita said. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? And one more time, anyone on Zoom? Okay, thank you. We'll close the public comment period and start with the public hearing. This is a public hearing on resolution 2418. It's a public hearing for the purpose of considering findings to support the CMG contracting process for the proposed new City Hall Police Station project. At this time, pursuant to ORS 279C.3355, I will open the public hearing in order to give any interested party a chance to comment on the draft findings for an exemption from the competitive bidding requirements. Staff, please present your report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Previously, it was recommended that the City Council adopt a construction manager, general contractor, or CMGC, construction delivery system for the construction of the City Hall and police stations. Since that time, the city has parted ways with the CMGC that was initially selected, and the city is again at a decision point regarding a delivery system for the projects. For the city to employ a delivery system other than hard bid will require a resolution calling for the alternative construction delivery system. In this case, the alternative delivery system is a modified construction manager / general contractor method. There are really two options available to the city at this point. They are to go off for what's called a hard bid from numerous contractors or to adopt a modified CMGC process. There are other alternatives such as design build, but we are through the designs, completely through the design phase. And essentially to go design build, we would be hiring a contractor, not a lot different than we would if it was a hard bid. But the other two, the one is generically a hard bid, and the other is a modified CMGC. With a hard bid, the project plans are made available to any interested general contractor to review and price out with subcontractors. The owner, in this case the city, would only see the total cost bid presented by the interested contractors. The contractors interested in bidding on the job are not required to call out any shortcomings they discover in the plans. Often that information comes to light in the form of change orders after the job is started. Staff and our architects are not recommending a hard bid to move forward with City Hall and Police Station because the methodology incentivizes the lowest or successful low bidder to find problems with the plans and propose potentially high cost fixes because there's no longer any competition with whom to be concerned. In the CMGC, the contractor is part of the design process and has responsibility / opportunity / incentive to solve problems in the design process. And once they provide the owner with a guaranteed maximum price or GMP, they own any future problems and not the owner unless the problem can be traced back to the owner. The modified CMGC that we're proposing would be slightly different take on the CMGC model. Specifically, the selected CMGC would perform two major functions. Phase one, the projects have reached an advanced degree of design, so the estimating that would take place during the design process has been completed. Instead, step one would be for the selected CMGC to review the plans and do a constructability analysis. In other words, they would certify that the design work completed so far is capable of clearly delineating structures that are buildable and that their firm is capable of constructing the structure. This is similar to where if we had stayed with our previous CMGC, where they would be certifying the constructability and if they are capable of building it and that sort. Phase two, the next step would be to provide the city with a guaranteed maximum price or GMP. The GMP is the price that the project will cost unless there are changes made necessary by deficient plans or significant modifications to the plans made by the project owner. The GMP would also include several levels of contingencies in the project budget to accommodate these eventualities. Staff recommends a modified CMGC model for several reasons. One, the second general contractor will have taken a second look at the constructability of the structures. Two, the tendency for the contractor to find problems and turn them into change orders is reduced because the CMGC reviewed the plans and provided a GMP. Number three, while the GMP may not be the final cost of the project, there are contingencies built into the budget to cover difficult project conditions such as soil problems and owner changes. Number four, that the city hall and police station continue to be considered a single project rather than two separate projects. In other words, if given consideration, I would recommend that we keep the projects combined. Remember that originally the city hall and police station were going to be in one structure. That changed with the legislative decision to require essential structures like a police station to be out of the large tsunami zone. That condition split the buildings. It is possible at this juncture to go back to two separate structures in terms of contracting if we want to. Staff does not recommend that we take that action. While we may get some smaller general contractors to bid on projects if they were split, we've also been told that significant efficiencies are possible if the CMGC is able to move crews from one site to another, or that the schedule of the projects could be slightly staggered. Think concrete contractor completing one site and going directly to the second site, followed by the framing crews. Suggested motion is I move to approve resolution 2418, a resolution of the Cannon Beach City Council adopting findings to support an exemption for the competitive bidding requirements for the new Cannon Beach City Hall and Police Station projects, declaring such exemption and authorizing a process to award a construction manager / general contractor or CMGC contract. And we have David Doofman from Beery, Elsner and Heller in Hammond on the line, and he's on Zoom and can answer any questions, but he's the one that has been helping us with the contracts.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Bruce or the attorney?
I have a question. I don't know if this is the time to ask it. On your exhibit 1, letter G, talking about operational budget and financial data. Says the total estimated budget for the combined projects is $25.8 million, which is also the estimated total cost of the work. However, the costs may come in higher because of the recent spike in construction costs. Is there Can you give me an example or an estimate of how much higher that might be and why?
I don't know, because it'll depend when we can actually start the projects. But they were set to begin a couple of months ago. And for various reasons, they were delayed, and those delays are not without cost. So it'll depend on the time from when they should have started, when they actually start, would depend on what those costs might be.
So when we go to issue the bonds for those, is that going to increase the cost of the bonds or increase the amount of bonds that we issue?
No, we will be able to issue the original cost, the original bond number, but that we would use other funding sources to be able to go ahead and pick up the differences in the costs for escalation.
And where would those sources be?
Tim? Tim is our finance director.
Yes, currently, right now, at the end of June 30th, 2024, in the prepared food tax fund, we have an additional 1.9 million at this point in time, and those funds would be available for this. Plus, we have some various reserves inside the general fund that the council would also have the option to look at also if they needed to.
Okay, so we're not talking,
Not general fund.
not general fund, okay. Then the other question I have on that same paragraph, it says the projected operating costs for the buildings are in the range of 100,000 to 120,000 annually. Can you give me the definition of what projected operating cost is?
Power, cleaning, those sort of costs that you have.
So just the operation, the regular operation of the building, for instance, if you were
Yes,
operating this building?
Yes.
Same, okay. Do we have any comparison as to how much it costs to operate this building versus how much it would cost to operate a new city hall?
At this point in time, no, we do not. The costs that we generally went with were what we basically are spending on the building right now.
As I understand this, all the activities of the actual construction are still going through a competitive bidding process. Can you?
yes, what will happen is that if we move forward with the modified CMGC, the CMGC will work with the architects to set up bid packages. And there will be a mechanical bid package, electrical, mechanical, that sort of thing. And then those would be bid publicly. And there's, they would be bid publicly, and then the sum total of those becomes the subtotal for the cost of the building. Plus, there's a cost that is involved in the negotiations with the CMGC, which is a set markup. So he or she or whoever would manage the projects would receive that markup for the cost of the bidding, the cost of the operations, the general conditions, those things that are associated with the cost. But the markup is known in advance, and all of the costs, all the bills are shown to the owner.
And the city's looking at all of this competitive bidding process
Yes.
and is part of the decision
Yes.
in each of those.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions at this time? Okay, thank you. So is there any interested party wishing to comment on the draft findings for an exemption from the competitive bidding requirements in the audience? Patrick?
Patrick Nofield, PO Box 843, Canada Beach. Before you set my timer, Barb, this time, can I just get a clarifying question? Where are you as far as the document phase? When I looked at the May 24th rendering for both assets, they were design development, 50% coordination. My question is, are you at a point where you actually have full-blown permit documents, bid documents, and just where we're at with that? If you can
We have
clarify.
documents to turn in for permit. They're permitting ready.
Will those go on the website anytime soon to be reviewed?
Yes.
Great.
Now you want me to start?
Yeah, okay, go. Great, you've got a clear path to move forward. I want to talk about two things. One is the project delay, the escalation piece. Granted, I'm sure there's escalation, but guys, your bonding pricing is coming down. You've got a 50 basis point drop. You're going to maybe have another 50 basis point drop. And over a 30-year period, the longer you hold off on this, selling the bonds, you're going to save a boatload of interest. So please be cognizant of that. I was on the Seaside School Board and on the building committee when we did the $100 million plus campus redevelopment. And I hear what Bruce is saying about the hard bid, but you can actually modify the CMGC to be a competitive bid. And that's exactly what we did. We, in a 60-day period, created an RFP. We identified 3 CMGC contractors. We went out to them. In 30 days, they responded with response for proposal. They were reviewed complete. And then we rated them. Then we interviewed, had each one of the CMGC companies come in. And so you're still doing the CMGC, but you do have some competitive options there. One of the ways general contractors make money, 3 ways actually, is profit and overhead or percentage of hard cost construction. General conditions are everything that's not on the bid document. It's supervisory labor, project management, general labor. It's the fencing, it's the cell phones, it's the mileage allotment, and it's a significant number. And that number gets moved quite a bit. The third way is not as impactful, but is general liability insurance, what they charge. If you have a competitive GMC bid process, you're going to find that profits or costs are actually going to be less than if you just carte blanche give it to somebody. Again, we did this process in 60 days. 60 days isn't going to kill you guys. I don't see you're going to be excavating Southwind in the rain. I mean, I can't imagine. I'm not sure what the timing is, but I just wish you'd consider that because it will potentially reduce cost. In findings, in fact, it talked about change orders. Change orders are inevitable. I mean, I've been doing this 30 years and it just pisses me off every time I get one. But change orders are a result of lack of coordination and communication between the owner, the architect, the engineers prior to getting in the ground. That's what happens. So one of the things that Lisa and I are doing now, we're doing a project in McMinnville. It's going to be a $40 million hotel. We hired a consultant, could be considered an owner's representative, but we have a pre-construction management agreement with this individual, this company, to come in from schematic design to design development to do everything that the CMG guys would do. They're not going to be CMGC, they're just consultants. And they get you to a point where they can do your scheduling, they can do cost, they can look at so many different avenues. They can actually take you through the CMGC process. And I'm excited about the McMinnville one because that's a custom built hotel. So many things can go so wrong. So this guy's coordinating everybody, the mechanical, the electrical, the plumbing, he's coordinating the structural, the architects and the owners. So I just ask that you at least consider another option. I think the main thing too for me is when we go out right now based on the Oregon Revised Statute 279C, if it's more than $5,000, we have to get 3 bids. We're talking $30+ million. Why wouldn't we try to make that as competitive? And I guess that's the concern is there's no reason to rush this now. You guys you're free and clear to move forward with this project. It's going to be exciting for you guys, but you don't want to get too far over your skis and screw up. And that's how costs go up. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience?
Can I just respond to something Patrick said?
Sure.
Patrick, on the competition, we have written into the RFP for, actually, I think it's into the actual documents that we can have competitive discussions with the, say if we have 3 or 4 firms. If it comes down to that being that close, we can be competitive, go to a competitive discussion.
Can I respond, Bruce?
Sure, I'm happy to learn.
No, so, you know, the subcontractors are all bidding off the same thing, and within reason, their numbers are all gonna be aligned, right? But that's why I wanted to talk about those variables that a CMGC contractor, the profit and overhead, the general conditions, you don't really have a comparison if you don't put it out to some type of competitive CMGC process. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you.
Thank you.
David has his hand up.
Thank you. David Dufman from the city attorney's office. I just wanted to clarify that point. I think Bruce alluded to it, but just to make sure there's no confusion, the city will be going out competitively to secure a new CMGC. There's going to be an RFP put out. That's part of the anticipated process. That's part of the recommendation. So just so that's very clear for the record, you know, the city does have that option of just directly awarding to a new CMGC contractor if you adopted the findings and passed the exemption. But unless something's changed very recently, my understanding is if the council passes tonight, the next step would be to have an advertised, you know, quote unquote, on the street request for proposals from CMGC contractors. Did I get that wrong, Bruce or staff?
No, sir. Correct.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom? Anyone else in the audience?
I have a quick question. So if the intent is to go out and get bids from other CMGCs, then why is this resolution necessary? Because then you would be going through the process, correct? If you continue without this resolution, you're going through the process, the normal process. With this resolution, you can effectively pick one CMGC and just go forward with that. Am I correct?
I don't believe so.
Do you want me to take that?
Yeah, go ahead, David. Thank you.
Okay, so it's a little bit confusing, that is for sure. But essentially for construction projects under state law, if cities, counties, public entities want to do anything other than what Bruce has described as the hard bid, you know, another term for it would be to the lowest responsible bidder, where you have a design, you bid it out, and then you have to accept the lowest bid essentially. If the city wants to do anything other than that, like a CMGC, like a design build, there are other delivery methods besides that sort of traditional method, then we have to go through this exemption process. So it's not that the city needs to do this in order to have a competitive CMGC process. Rather, it needs to do this to use the CMGC process in the first place. Hope that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Lisa, did you still want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say something. It's kind of back to what Patrick was saying. I think.
Can you give your name and?
Oh, I'm sorry, Lisa No-Field, PO Box 843.
Thank you. Thanks.
Anyway, just circling back to what Patrick was saying, when we go to build a hotel, we get 3 bids, and then that helps us save money because, you know, sometimes they come in completely different. And I can't imagine if we only went with one company or even 2. And like when we've gone to build a house, we get 2 bids, sometimes 3. And so I would just really encourage you to, go and explore this with at least 3 bids. And thank you for all your time. I know it's a lot going to all these meetings, so thanks.
Thank you.
As I understand it, we're sending out an RFP, request for proposal, to several different companies that use the CMCG process, right? And we're
Yes.
going to have competitive bids from those companies, right?
We don't actually send them to anybody. We post it in the
We
newspaper.
posted, well,
Right.
whatever, but we are seeking several bids from contractors who use the CMCG process.
Right, we will talk to CMGCs and then we will deal with qualifications. And then we can get into, the relative cost, but the bidding itself is generally among the subcontractors. Where the successful CMGC would put out the mechanical work and then get a price for that. So that's all, is all hard bid, but it's up to the CMGC to manage it.
And generally speaking, and this is built in to the contract, actually state law requires it at this point. What you're looking at tonight will allow the city to select a CMGC, and for all intents and purposes, that's just the general contractor. For the purposes of this point I'm trying to make, it's the contractor that's going to lead the construction. And within that, then when they are going and preparing this guaranteed maximum price, they will have a requirement when they get subcontractors on board to be getting, typically, not every time, but in most instances, it's written such that they do need to get at least 3 subcontractor bids for various aspects of the work. So there's a competitive process up front that is a qualifications-based selection, as Bruce said, to get your CMGC, your main contractor. And then the CMGC, as they're going out and getting various aspects of the work, getting subcontractors, those 2 will at least be, up to 3 for most aspects of the project.
Madam Mayor, can I approach one more time, please?
Sure.
I guess I'm confused. So as I mentioned, when we did the school project, we didn't put a bid out. We actually identified 3 CMGC companies and asked them to answer the proposal. And I guess either way is fine. But my question is, why do you need a resolution? And I think you tried to explain it, but I still don't understand. And maybe it's me. But why do you need a resolution if you're actually going out and getting competitive CMGC bids?
To do anything other than design, bid, build, any other sort of alternative contracting delivery method, like a CMGC, like a design build, under state law, school districts, the city, the county, it doesn't really matter. Any owner that's going to be carrying on that work needs to exempt it from that traditional competitive bidding requirement. And normally it's done through a resolution like this.
Okay.
So it just allows us to take it out of the traditional design, bid, build with an award to the lowest responsible bidder and look for, in this case, someone to deliver the project as a CMGC.
Okay, so if you did a design build process or a CMGC process, you would have to do this resolution to be conforming with the law.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Sure.
All clear for you now, Patrick? Clear as mud, clear as mud. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone on Zoom? So if there's no further discussion, I will close the public hearing at this time and move to consideration.
I'd like to thank Patrick for bringing up those issues. I was hoping to discuss those, exactly what we just discussed here. So for the record, we will be, if you could help me out, Bruce. We will be soliciting the CMGC contractors, but not personally soliciting them. Is that what I've heard you say so far?
We will be posting something in the Daily Journal of Commerce, probably on Friday. And it'll let people know, or prospective CMGCs, to know that they can go to our website and download the plans. And it'll also give them the schedule of when, if they have an interest in proposing, their proposals would be submitted, the days that we would be doing interviews, that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you.
And in that process, we can ask for some sort of a competitive pricing, but remember, they're not going to have pricing yet from subcontractors.
Yes. It will be a best guess bid, or I mean estimation.
Yes, or when they're with their proposal, and they will say, we want to charge, a premium of so much over the cost of the subcontracts. And we will know what that number is. And then, whatever that number, however it comes out to be, will be based on the cost of the subcontracts, which are publicly bid.
Is there anything by state law preventing us from contacting construction management and general contracting firms?
You certainly can give it personally to a firm if you know of one that you think would be a worthwhile partner. That's totally fine. But there is the requirement to publicly advertise it as well as the city.
Sure. Okay.
I think Patrick got it when David explained it, but I'm not sure I did. So we need this process because this is kind of a modified version of hiring someone. Can you help me understand that?
It is a modified CMGC process. We initially started out with the CMGC process that would have been, just right according to the book, where we did the advertising, we go through the interviews, all those things. And then that CMGC sits alongside the architect. We had made a change in the middle of the process. We were able to make it after the designs were done, the drawings were done, but before the GMP. So we are going to be asking them in the modification is that we are going to be asking them to come in, take a look from the drawings, and then determine the constructability, because we will have the opinion of the CMGC that the building is constructible, and there also would be giving us the costs as we went through the different levels of design. So they would be able to say it's probably going to be this cost. And anyway, so we would have that information as we went all the way through. With the modified, we're going to have somebody come in somewhat in the middle of the process, but at a point that's convenient where they can do the constructability analysis. And then we do the same process going into the next phase.
And so because it's that modified process, we would be required by law to go through this.
Yes.
Okay.
And then also, I assume nothing requires us to actually accept one of these firms if we don't feel like they're the best fit for us. Because they perhaps were the only ones to apply, some sort of reasoning like that.
I believe that's the case in
That is true. Yep. There's no obligation to accept anything at the end of the RFP process.
Okay.
We do the CMGC process. We reach a point where there's a GMP. If we are not comfortable with the GMP, we can terminate our discussions with that particular contract.
Okay. I think what I'm hearing is that we will be able to, within reason, pick from hopefully a group of candidates
Mhm.
and realize the competitiveness within that. Do we necessarily have to pick the lowest price, or do we get to pick who we feel will do the best job?
I'll turn that over to David.
So if you adopt the resolution tonight, then you have the flexibility to select who you think is going to do the best job. It doesn't have to be based on the lowest price. That though, you know, lowest responsible bid or lowest bid. If you don't have the exemption in place and you don't pass the resolution or a resolution like it, then state law, that's the default under state law, that you go through a low bid process. So doing this gets you to the point of really getting to really look at how qualified a contractor may be, rather than just the cost that they're going to propose.
You know, with this project, the way that we're doing the project, we won't, and actually the proposers won't have the costs from the subcontractors. They will be able to say, these are what our costs are, and this is what our multiplier, whatever you want to call that number be. That would be it, that they would be on top of the subcontracts. But the subcontracting all has to be bid, and it's a public bid.
What happens if the subcontractors come in higher than what was expected originally?
We would have some decisions to make.
So if we decided we wanted to go with a particular CMCG based on their cost, but not what the subcontractors cost, then the subcontractors come in and declare their costs. Can we change our decision to go with another CMCG?
David?
If I think I understand the question to be if the CMGC, so the CMGC, as Bruce was saying, will respond to this RFP and will give us information about, you know, we've done these projects, we've done this project. They will also give us what their fee is going to be, and that's always expressed as a percentage of what the actual cost to build the building will be. So you're selecting the CMGC on the basis of that figure and their qualifications, and then they're going to review the design that's been presented. As Bruce said, they're going to look to see if there's ways to get you to the same point, maybe with less expense. Or if there's anything in the design that they see that they have concerns about. And then at that point, they're going to present the city with what's called a guaranteed maximum price to build the buildings. And that GMP will be informed by what they're getting back from subcontractors. So when you pick at the end of this initial proposal process to get a CMGC, you still won't know exactly what the price is going to be for construction. That's going to come in when they propose a guaranteed maximum price. And if you accept it, which you don't have to, but if you do, then if there are costs that go over that, let's say that you know, the cost of a material goes higher than what the CMGC contractor said it would be, or thought it would be. If that can't be made up from their contingency, then that increase is on them. The only time the city would be responsible for an increase to the guaranteed maximum price is basically if the city orders a change to the scope of the work, you know, and usually that would be some change the city orders to the design. You know, that would be very unlikely, given the fact that you have a design at this point that is, as I understand it, pretty much done.
So is their guaranteed maximum price going to be based on, also on the subcontractors' estimates of the cost of their work?
Typically, yes. Yep.
Okay, so we would get the guaranteed maximum price after they go to the subcontractors and talk to them about costs.
That's right. That's right. The contractor, the CMGC, is naturally, like in any project, I think, going to have a pretty good idea of what they think the various aspects of the work will cost. But you're absolutely right. The once they get those subcontractor quotes, bids back, that's what will be the basis for their final GMP. And then the city gets to say yes or no to that, or negotiate, frankly.
Question, okay.
I'll read this long motion if you would like.
I think that would.
I move to approve. You have a question?
I don't have a question so much as an observation in that I think we are achieving through this what has been suggested through public testimony. At least that's what I've heard this evening. I may be misinterpreting somebody's statements, which I don't want to do, but I believe this puts us in position to be able to seek the best price and the best qualification, even though those two may not necessarily be, in the interest of saving money, I guess I'm saying. So I'm sorry to interrupt.
No.
Gary, go ahead.
So I move to approve resolution 2418, a resolution of the Cannon Beach City Council adopting findings to support an exemption from competitive bidding requirements for the new Cannon Beach City Hall and Police Station projects, declaring such exemption and authorizing a process to award a construction manager, general contractor contract.
A second.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Ogilvy?
Yes.
Council President McCarthy?
Yes.
Counselor Hayes?
Yes.
Mayor Knopf?
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Best of luck.
Thanks.
Okay, next we have consideration of resolution 2419, a resolution declaring the need to acquire certain real property for a drainage project or the drainage project. Bruce?
Yes, ma'am. This has to do with the storm drainage project in the residentials. Council is aware the city is in the process of acquiring property in preparation for a critical infrastructure project. Oregon State Parks and Recreation Department, or OPRD, is requiring the city to remove the 5 drain outfalls that run from Ocean Avenue out to the ocean shore between Washington and Harrison Streets. There are 3 tax lots along the beach that are between the city right-of-way and the OPRD ocean shore property that must be crossed to perform the work OPRD has mandated. During the December 12, 2023 council meeting, staff provided a status of the project and reported that after repeated attempts to reach the property owners without success, we needed permission to proceed with the potential condemnation of the property. Staff received approval from the council at that meeting and proceeded with the condemnation process. During the 40-day final offer notification part of that process, property owner responded to the city attorney agreeing to the terms of the offer and their desire to proceed without going through condemnation. As such, the city staff has prepared a resolution to support this agreement to obtain the 3 tax lots. Attached Exhibit A is the resolution and associated documents for this project action. Staff is seeking council approval of resolution 2419 to move forward with this agreement. And we have Nikki Swift, who's the attorney at Cable Houston, who's representing us, and she's on Zoom for any questions you might have. Nikki, you there?
I'm here. Good evening.
Yay.
Good evening. Anybody have any questions?
I believe they purchased those properties, even though they're not buildable, just to preserve views, if I understand correctly. But my question is, I didn't see any kind of limitations on use for the city other than they're unlikely something that they would be impossible to build on. Essentially, this is property west of Ocean Avenue.
Right.
So there were no limitations or deed restrictions in the sale.
Nikki?
Sorry, yeah, is your question whether the current owner is imposing any limitations on the city or?
Yes.
No. So essentially we're acquiring all the right title and interest that the current owner has. And how I had understood from talking to him, it's currently owned by a trust, and I spoke with the trustee, and he and his family had stepped in a couple decades ago to essentially ensure that these properties would not be built on. So he's happy that the city will now be officially taking ownership of them. And so there aren't any qualms about, you know, for instance, that he has like a house nearby and, you know, doesn't want the city to either do or not do something on these properties. We're just taking the properties in the condition that they are and that he has them now. And then the city will own them.
Very good news.
Yes. You wonder why they wouldn't respond to us.
But yeah, based off of my understanding, the current trustee is actually experiencing some significant medical issues, and that I think has caused some delays in responding, and I think in perhaps accessing the mail. There was an issue in trying to find the current address as well, because the address that was on file is an old one, including, I think, the one that's registered at the county level for this particular property. And so we had to do some investigation on that front as well.
Understood. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Bruce, just to, I think mostly for the public, is that our intent is to put infrastructure in the ground.
Essentially,
It's nothing going to be above ground.
nothing above ground. It'll be underground pipes.
And then what is the expectation of how the property will be left after the project's finished?
I don't know, but I'm assuming it would be replanted or else left to vegetate on its own. And then replaced it at this existing grade.
Okay,
And this is a project the state is requiring us to do. Is that
Yes.
right?
and this will all be something that'll be run through the council coming up. This just is to acquire the property,
It's
correct?
just to acquire the property and it'll be treated as a capital project.
Yeah, I guess my reason for even asking my previous question was because I walk Ocean Avenue a lot and I'm tired of dodging cars and dust. And I would love to see more of a trail alongside the road rather than having
Right.
having to walk down the gravel road, but that's for a future discussion.
It would certainly help to know the homeowner.
We now have that connection.
I'll move to adopt resolution 2419, resolution declaring the need to acquire certain real property for a drainage project.
Second,
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy,
yes.
Council President McCarthy,
Yes.
or not.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very
much.
I will just clarify that this is, a draft purchase and sale agreement. I don't anticipate there being any major changes. But the owner that we're working with, is battling some medical issues. And so we are still finalizing the specific language to it, but in terms of the price and obviously the land we're acquiring, that won't change.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to close the special meeting and open the work session. And the first item on the agenda is to recognize Lisa Havaker as the Northwest Aquatic and Marine Educator of the Year Award recipient.
City Council, city staff, community members, family and friends, and Kelly. So I'm honored and I can talk for hours and I'm not going to, I'm gonna shut up now. I'm Kelly, take it over.
I'll just say maybe a quick little thing and then let Lisa say her words. So I want to reiterate some of the really wonderful things.
It'd be easier for you to sit in the chair with.
I don't know that she'll accept this. I can see.
I can.
She's the real boss here. Yeah, so I want to reiterate some of the great things that were said about Lisa at the NAME conference that we attended. It only puts it only puts it's a small little window and fraction into some of the wonderful things that we can say about Lisa, because we really can go on and on about what an incredible asset she has been for the program at ATRAP and for the city of Cannon Beach. So I will go ahead and read what they have. So the winner of the 2024 Outstanding Marine Aquatic Educator is Lisa Havaker, Education and Volunteer Coordinator at the Haystack Rock Awareness Program in Cannon Beach, Oregon. Lisa has worked for ATRAP since 2002 and has been coordinating educational programming for ATRAP since then, officially becoming the Education and Volunteer Coordinator in 2015. In 2 decades with ATRAP, Lisa has directly provided marine-based educational programs for over 40,000 students and has provided interpretive education for over 100,000 individuals visiting Haystack Rock. And I think that number is actually a little lower than reality. She has been a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service volunteer for 7 years, a NAME member for the past 8 years, and is a certified Rocky Shore interpreter. ATRAP and Lisa value education for visitors of all ages and backgrounds. They are committed to integrated and research-based approaches to public education. The program values the importance and ambassadorial role of the teacher in public education. Lisa's programming ensures inquiry-based learning, research, reflection, and service as a means to engage the local, regional, and international communities to address environmental concerns. ATRAP values the role of the teacher as expressed in their belief statements on education. They believe that as teachers, we need to foster every student's ability to think independently, build confidence, engage their culture, and understand their beliefs. The program's actions reflect the belief that all students matter and are capable of learning, and that every student, regardless of what age they are, the background they come from, deserves to discover their inherent desire to learn. Lisa is an amazing leader and educator, and we at NAME are proud to honor her with this award. And I want to add to that there's not been a single person since Lisa has joined ATRAP that has not learned a tremendous amount from her and her decades of knowledge and experience. It's continues to carry on. She is great with our visitors of all ages. If you haven't been out at the beach to see her talking to some of the students at some of the field trips, whether it's the kindergartners or to some of our locals who have been here all the time, or to someone who is going to the beach for the first time at the age of 85, no matter who it is, and you see them interact with Lisa and you're going to be inspired. And I really encourage anyone who hasn't done that to go ahead and do that, because her work speaks for itself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
No, I'm gonna be quiet. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have the lifeguard end of the season report. Good evening, Mark. You brought us something to watch?
Yeah, it actually worked. We tried it first this time. I learned last time. And I couldn't do this without this, so. So it wasn't supposed to be me here tonight. It was supposed to be our lifeguard captain and Jason Smith, which you guys know was supposed to be doing this tonight. But unfortunately, neither one of them were able to be here due to some emergency personal things. So I get to do it with their presentation they built, not me. So I have their notes. So this is kind of the end of the year report of how the season went. We still have lifeguards on the beach. As we're going to talk about that a little bit as we go through of kind of still what we're doing and what we're doing into the next year. So with that, just to reiterate, Cannon Beach has one of the, if not probably the oldest lifeguard program on the West Coast. This has been going since 1938, before the city was even incorporated. And that is really kind of proud that we still have this program going. And we're going to talk about a couple things that happened this year that make it just so important. It really is important to the community and to the visitors of why we have the program. So just kind of reiterate, we started this intergovernmental agreement in 2022, where we started helping staff the beach and did the intergovernmental agreement to use some of our firefighters to work on the beach. And then in 23, we took over managing the program. And then this last year completely took it over with Jason really leading that program to completely take it over this year. And with that, really kind of rebranding and looking at this as not just a lifeguard program, but joining the lifeguard and the surf rescue program. And really what they've turned it into and talk is the Ocean Safety Division. And that's really what the focus has been this year. So we started off the season with staffing. We were on the beach by April 15th. The goal was to be the 1st of April. We actually were on the beach by the 15th of April and having 1 to 2 people on the beach every day before we even had the tower up, just patrolling, and then officially kicking off the season to fully staffing May 27th. That was when we had the tower up and semaphores and fully staffed. But prior to that, again, we were already on the beach and making those contacts and doing what we talked about that preseason. We hired the lifeguard captain. His name is Koa Liu. Began in mid-June. And the intention was to meet him tonight, but he's not here. But he came from Hawaii with a lot of experience in the lifeguard program there. Has just been a tremendous asset to us of building this program. So again, we're still staffing the beach. The semaphores are down, the tower's put away, but we're still putting 1 to 2 people on the beach every day, depending on the weather. Today, we had 1 on the beach part of the day. Yesterday, we had 2 on the beach until the fog rolled in. And then don't really need them. And so through the end of October, it'll still be on the beach patrolling, depending on weather and depending on crowds. So this year we had 3 lead guards, then 8 seasonals, and then 2 what we call tower guards, where they're not necessarily able to enter the water yet, but they're our eyes. So they are able to be in the tower. It just gives that one more person on the beach. They're also, when we had enough, they were in another vehicle with the guards, and so they became eyes when one guard entered the water. And we're going to talk about how important that was in here a little bit on one incident. And then we had 7 of our firefighters that also worked on the beach when we were short lifeguards. When we couldn't get lifeguards to staff and we wanted more than just 2, then we had 7 of them that would come in and work and trade that off. So the lifeguards were on the beach by 10 o'clock. They shift start at 10 o'clock, get everything set up, and then on the beach. They're on the beach by no later than 11. Most of the time they're down there about 10:30. And then they're usually off the beach about 7:15. There was sometimes during the year that they were on the beach till 8 o'clock, just because of how busy it was. And they weren't comfortable leaving the crowds and leaving things they were. So there was some days they were on the beach much later. But they're normal on the beach from 11 to 7:15. So the Cannon Beach lifeguards cover approximately 3.5 miles of coastline in the city limits. Our district actually covers a little over 10 miles with 9 different beaches. And this is important because the lifeguards are covering this 3.5 miles. But the way we're designing the program now with integrating the lifeguards and with the surf rescue program, it's really increasing our abilities. That we're able to have the lifeguards on and really covering that beach and eliminating and just dramatically reducing the work that we're doing on the beach and the rescues to where now we have a easier time responding to the rest of the beach that isn't patrolled by lifeguards. We did have an incident on Chapman, which is actually outside the beach area. It's outside the city. It's on around the corner. But the lifeguards were instrumental in being part of that rescue because of where the kids were. It was a cliff rescue, but we needed somebody in the water that if those kids ended up on down, coming off that cliff, we needed somebody down there. And so one of our firefighters and one of the lifeguards ended up swimming around the corner to be down there if they did slide down the cliff. And so that's the integration that we've really worked on creating. So looking at contacts and statistics. So there's the breakdown of, prevention, education, first aid, rescues, and we're going through kind of each one of those and what that means. But they had just a lot of contacts this year. Total of what I call 520 prevention contacts. Those contacts are just going out and having conversation with somebody of that they're playing near a rip current and understanding, educating what rip currents are and the dangers of where they may be. So there's 520 prevention contacts, which some of those were multiple contacts, a total of 3,300 people contacted for prevention. And that is just, again, just education. Hey, that's ought to be a move over here. And then education of just educating people, necessarily aren't in the rip current, but just making contact with people and educating them as they're coming to the beach. Most of the job of the lifeguards is about education prevention. If we are doing that, then we eliminate the rescues. And that's what COA's real focus was with lifeguards. If anybody was on the beach throughout the year, you didn't see the guards just sitting at the tower. You had one in the tower and the rest were up and down the beach, and depending on how many guards on, how much they divide the beach up, and they each took sections. And really just educating and talking to people, keeping them out of trouble to where we don't have the rescues. First aid contacts, just exactly what it is. Don't necessarily need medical, but just cuts, scrapes, bee stings, giving out Band-Aids, that kind of thing. We had 4 rescues. So when the lifeguards enter the water for a rescue, they immediately are on the radio as they're entering, or somebody else is as that lifeguard's entering, and calling for water rescue, calling for the surf team. All 4 of those, we never launched the surf rescue team. We responded, but by the time we got there, the rescue was complete or nearly complete. Out of 4 of those, 1 of those actually ended up in a full rescue and a transport. This incident, had the lifeguard not recognized where that child was and what they were getting into, this would have resulted in a fatality. Undoubtedly a fatality. He recognized where she was on a boogie board and he already had his suit halfway up, began pulling his suit all the way up to go in and make contact with her. The other lifeguard that was with him, was watching. By the time he pulled his wetsuit up, she was already in the water and she was out. Out far enough that she couldn't be seen anymore. He went in, made the rescue. Another lifeguard came in and helped him bring the child in. This incident is exactly why we have lifeguards on the beach. It was very evident that without them there, without that lifeguard patrolling and seeing that girl, it would have resulted in fatality. There's many other stories of the year of just contacts that I think also prevented it. But most of those were education and got people to move and, people that have no idea what rip currents are. But this was very evident. The other ones were minor, that the guards were going to pull somebody out, no big deal. The other is just assists. Just assisting different people on the beach, whether it's giving them a ride back because they're tired and getting them back to their vehicle. Assisting with a lost child or all kinds of different assist things. And then missing found. The lifeguards get all kinds of contacts of missing a wallet, found a wallet, missing a child, or found a child. More than once, the lifeguards find a child on the beach. The parents don't even know we're missing. The child's lost for the parents. So those are just kind of the different odd things that the lifeguards do besides keeping people safe in the water. So big difference this year, and we'll be going into the next year, is training. We started off in April with the USLA training. Every day that the lifeguards could, and they had enough people on the beach, they would be in the water first thing in the morning doing training. 158 training events during the season. Every Wednesday, the surf team would go down and join the lifeguards, and they'd launch the jet skis and do surf training with lifeguards. So there's a lot of joint training going on with that, but just every day, getting in the water and doing exercises in the water and doing training in the water, I think makes the lifeguards just that much better. And it takes what we're referring to as the tower guards. They can't act as a lifeguard, but they can train with the lifeguards. They can make entry in the water to learn to be a lifeguard into the training, and that's what they were doing. let's see. So in the equipment, as we started the beginning of the year, we replaced the side-by-side, the UTV. Oops. That was one of the first things we did is we knew coming in the season, we either had to repair it or replace it. And we found it to be unrepairable. And so it was sold and we replaced it with a brand new one. We also got rid of the old Dodge that we had and replaced it with two of our staff vehicles to hand down. So the Tundra and the Cherokee were outfitted to be lifeguard vehicles. And then plus we had the two ATVs that we got from the city. One was good and one were repaired. And so that was a lifeguard vehicles for the season. Will continue for the next couple of years. We also found out how hard sand is on those vehicles. And was the challenge of a couple of them end up in the shop a few times. But definitely did some upgrade to our apparatus and our vehicles. Working on tower. That's been a conversation for quite a while with the tower. The tower was built in '80s. And we've done a lot of repairs to it to keep it going, but it definitely is in need of repair or replacement. And so they're hoping in the next year, this next off season to replace it with a fiberglass composite tower that's lighter, easier to move, and stands up better in the weather. San Francisco, a lot of the California uses these and have been using them for decades and decades, and they stand up well. These are a couple examples. Obviously, ours will be much taller because of the way our beach is, but something to this we'll be working on the next year to replace. I'm using their notes. Moving forward, is starting the season earlier. The idea of the having the lifeguard captain position is that through this year now, as we start coming off the beach, it doesn't mean we're done with the lifeguards. The training of the lifeguards, of those current lifeguards we have, will continue through the year. They will be, through that winter, they will be doing training every time that they can look at the surf and they have calm enough conditions to do training. They'll be scheduling training and doing training throughout the winter. So that when we come into April, we are ready to go. The USLA class, United States Life Saving Association, that is what we're after. We're after getting that certification. And that's a class we do. But historically, we've done that in April. We need to be doing that in February so that by April, we're already on the beach. Because without this, there is a initial class and there's a renewal class. And without that, we can't have lifeguards in the water. They have to go through this. And so we need to be doing this in February so that by April, they're in the water. So that'll be the goal of this next year, is to have that. The goal is to up that staffing. Our goal on the really busy weekends is we're having 5 people on the beach, to never below 3. There's times we had 2. It's not ideal, but it's what we had to do a few times. But on some of those days that we had 2, we ended up bringing in off duty to supplement those. We also, with the way it's integrated now, there was a few days that we had, 2, 3, 4 guards on the beach, but the beach was so busy and the water was so warm that the lifeguards were struggling to keep people out of bad spots. And so we would send our rescue down and they would go down and help the lifeguards patrol. They weren't committed to the beach. They were going to leave, or they had to leave for calls, but they could go down the beach and help, just help with those prevention contacts. And so that's the beauty of the way we're merging this together. throughout the year, doing marketing, not just in signs of prevention, but doing marketing of recruiting lifeguards. And so the recruitment of that is starting now, to start recruiting the lifeguards for the next season. Keeping the lifeguards we have for the next season and building on that. And I think a lot of the marketing too is just continuing the prevention and the messaging now. So it's seen for the next year. It's amazing how many people come here that they don't read the signs. They don't read signs going to the beach. They don't know. And so the more we can get out on social media now, the more it's already in their head to see when they come to the beach. This, just as a recap, this was to us, a very successful year. And the reason we say it's successful is the rescues. We did not have the rescues we've had in the past. And it was successful, I think, because of the change of how we staff the beach and what the lifeguards did on the beach. COA really came in with a plan and met with the lifeguards daily and was in communication with them of his expectations of how they staff the beach. And between him down there and really training the leads with the expectations, that's why we had this successful year that we had. And historically, the kind of seasons ended Labor Day weekend. Like I said, we still have guards on the beach because historically we've had rescues after the guard program has ended. And that's what we wanted to prevent. The two big things we wanted to prevent was that the rescues after the season and the preseason. The Mother's Day weekend, the Father's Day weekend rescues that we've had. And we didn't have those. We had some extremely busy weekends, but it didn't result in the rescues. That's their presentation. It was not mine. But I'm really proud of the program this year. I think between COA and Jason, they really built a good program and a program that we can continue into the years.
So is the lifeguard captain?
Yep.
Returning?
Oh yeah, he's full time. So he's full time.
Okay, good.
He's year round. The agreement was that we hired a full-time person with the city basically paying 2/3 of it. And so that goes into that budget of the personnel services. But yeah, COA is full-time. He just had a family emergency, he had to fly back to Hawaii. And so unfortunately, that's why he's not here. But phenomenal, and we'll continue to build this program through the off season, which was the idea of that full-time person. Any questions?
Oh, great presentation, Mark. Thank you.
You do a good job as a substitute.
You won't see me in the water. Oh, absolutely. They've done a great job putting it together. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, we have the financial report for the fourth quarter. Good evening, Jim. Jim?
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I am here to present the fourth quarter financial report. Now, please remember, this is unaudited. We have gone through the audit. They were here last week, but these numbers here are actually unaudited, but they should be. So I'll just go through some highlights. Please stop me at any time if you have any questions, and I'll go from there. So really some highlights in the general fund. Room tax revenues increased from the prior year about $335,000. Our total revenue came in the general fund again at 7.9 million, and 95% of and the top 10 sources represented 7.5 million, which was 95% of the total revenue. So it's actually a kind of a little bit higher percentage. The ending fund balance in the general fund went from 5.3 million down to 4 million. The big reason for that is because we spent about 1.5 million this last year for the City Hall and Police Station. So if we would have been able to issue the bonds in May, then that would have evened out. But now when we're issuing the bonds now, the general fund will be repaid and that will be filled. So if you were to look at it, removing that, we actually were to the positive by about $200,000 in the general fund. County TRT, if you'll see that in the middle there is that county room tax revenue was about 901,000. That is atypical. It does not usually come in that big. It's usually in the 400 plus range. The reason was there was a taxpayer in arrears, and that came through to us. So it's one big time payment. The fund balance we'll talk about here in that fund, talk about here in a second, but that is not what we would normally see. We probably normally see 500,000. Again, on the page 2, we just kind of go through the reserve funds. So we have several reserve funds. The district or the council, sorry, the city has several reserves, and those are both made up of fund balances inside of our normal funds plus our reserve funds. And so there's a list. The general fund reserve is about 3.1 million on top of the current ending fund balance in the general fund. On the general fund revenue breakdown, and this is the budget this is actuals to budget. Budget was about 6.8 million and we came in at about 7.9 million on the revenues in the general, again, in the general fund. Big drivers for that difference is about a little over 400,000 roughly in transient lodging tax difference, and then about 500,000 in interest between what we budgeted and what we actually received. So that's really why the big driver is on what those differences are. And then on expenditures, that's page 4, but you will see again what I explained earlier at the very bottom, where the ending fund balance at June 30 ends up at 4.4 or 4.0 and was started at 5.3. And again, the big difference is what we spent on this. We did have one little hiccup in the community development fund. We were over budget by about $3,000 for the year. Again, as the general fund, we are not, but in that individual line item, we were, and that was mostly driven by some legal fees. And that won't happen again. I was new.
Can you guarantee?
I was new. In the individual fund balances, the other funds, a couple of highlights. Again, county TRT fund is now at about 1.6 million. The tourism and arts fund is at about 1.3 million. Now, what we typically do with the tourism and arts fund is we issue grants. Those roughly end up around 250,000 in any given year. But we receive roughly 500,000 in that fund. So we have another 250,000 that will typically fall to the bottom line in that fund. So those are funds that will be later be able to be used for tourism related activities. But one item that I do not have on here, and I apologize because I used an older format, and the 1.5% TRT fund started. And so I talked to it a little bit, but what should be here is the 1.5% TRT fund had an ending fund balance at June 30th of about $314,000. So that is the fund that is would be used to pay for and operate the CBE. So that currently, we will be starting right now with about $314,000, not including what we will receive in the current. The prepared food tax, I did mention this a little bit during the CMGC conversation. In the prepared food sales tax fund at June 30th, we have an ending fund of about 1.9 million. So then for any non-reserve funds, the only fund that we actually went down in ending fund balance is the recycling fund. And the majority of the reason for that is because we spent about $30,000 on a brand new baler. And that's basically the difference in that fund. Every other fund that was not a non-reserve where we were scheduled to spend, we have a positive outcome. So the ending funds in each of those have increased. Let's see here, ending funds, so nothing really on page 7. On page 8. This is comparison between the 2 years, so in the general fund, so year ending 6/30/2023, 6/30/2024. Difference between those 2 years in total revenue is about $264,000, about 3.5% increase. However, in the 2023 year, there were 2 one-time items, and both of those items are the American Rescue Plan grants, and those totaled about $396,000. So actually, if you look at year over year, not one-time items, it was actually a much more positive year than we had. On page 9, top 10 revenues. Again, I mentioned this earlier. So the top 10 revenues in the general fund ended up to be about 7.5 million out of a $7.9 million total. That's roughly 95%, up from an 88% in the prior year. You will notice the big jump is really in the interest income. So that moved from number 3 to number 2, and it was a fairly significant jump, almost 400 or a little over $400,000 in between those 2 years. So that was a big difference in that. Then on page 10, we're talking about transient room taxes. The top part of this is we budgeted 5.5 million. We came in at 6.5. And again, this is all sources, right? So this is not just general fund. This is actually all sources. And it came in at about 6.5, which is a little over $1 million or about 15% above budget. And a year over year increase was about 11.9%. Again, all funds. Now, a big driver of that, of course, is because we implemented the 1.5% tax, et cetera. So that's a big driver of that. But yes, definitely up above where we budgeted. And just for
Nothing to know,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Portion of that might be those 2 quarters of the additional 1.5 and how much was growth.
Yeah, we will see that in page 12.
Okay, I should have let you finish.
That's all right. Then for comparison purposes, page 11 is just talking about the last 4 years prior. You'll notice there was, again, back in 1920, we had 3.8 million, then up to 5.5, 5.9, then 5.8, and now we're at 6.5. So if you go to page 12 breaks it down by each of the individual funds on how we did here. So for the total, again, we received 6.5 million in total. 300,000 of that is driven by the CBE fund, which is the bottom there. As a percentage, was that 5%-ish? Roughly 5%. So that's kind of one of the bigger drivers there. But again, we had a really good overall year for collections. So I think that's one thing we can take away from that. See, then we have the Tourism and Arts Fund, and these are the distributions for the grants. Again, that's inside the TAF fund. Roughly, again, we received roughly $500,000 in that fund. We are able to, or historically have given out grants roughly in the $250,000 range, roughly half of what we've collected in that fund. So again, those are additional funds that are available for other tourism related activities. And then just lastly on page 14 is really kind of the fixed assets. So what we've added in the fixed assets in the current year, about $4.5 million. A big part of that is the design of both this and the police station, plus the water resiliency projects. Those are the big drivers from the capital standpoint, and then the Midway pump station. So those are really the biggest drivers on that. And with that, I am open to any questions. Went through that kind of fast. I
I
apologize.
always have to ask if we've got this 1.2 million in tourism and arts fund reserve. But there was $500,000 roughly dedicated to Midtown restrooms. Was that transfer done or?
That's in the current year. So that in the current year, those bathrooms are funded from ongoing expenditures. So we're starting at 1.3 million, but we have 400,000 that is dedicated in the current year to spend.
Okay.
For those, yeah, so it's allocated, it is budgeted in the current year.
Right.
To be able to do that spending, yes.
There's some commitment of those one.
There is some commitment into that, but again, like I said, half of it is TAF, half of what you get in income is TAF, and the other half is, so the amount that's actually committed is fairly smaller.
But why is the Clatsop County TRT fund? There's a separate line item for that. And that's all a tourism restricted fund.
Correct. So it's an additional 1% that the county, I cannot remember the date on which the county passed it, but the part of it was they keep 30% for the jail, the other 70% comes to us. So that's.
We just keep it in.
We just keep it in there, and it was the fund that we originally used to purchase the CB. That's where the original 400,000.
And to fund
Don't spend anything out of it really.
And to fund the debt service on the FFC bonds.
Yes.
For CBE.
Mhm.
But that one. That's definitely inflated because of the big payment first.
Yeah, it was roughly 450 extra dollars for us.
And then the $3 million general fund reserve, that reflects a transfer.
So that reflects a transfer in 23-24. So yes.
RV.
No, from the general fund transfer is actually a transfer from the general fund into the general fund reserve of roughly $700,000. There's another one budgeted in the current year. So if you look at it totally too, then we're in, because you've made 200,000 plus you transferred another 700 into a reserve, you're
so
at a pretty big year in your general
fund. I think it was $300,000 contribution as this fiscal year.
The RV fund puts 300,000 every year into the general fund, and then the general fund will usually transfer money into the general fund reserve.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So if for some reason we use the RV park for another purpose, for instance, housing, we wouldn't be getting that $300,000 then.
You would not be getting the 300,000. That is correct. So there would be, yes, you would not be receiving the $300,000 a year. Plus, really from the RV park, there's $300,000 a year that comes into the general fund. There's another $100,000 a year that goes into the RV reserve. And then there's usually about another 80 grand that falls to their bottom line. So if you look at the RV park fund right now, it is, it's at 1.1 million, started at 1.0, 1.08. So it had about what is that, $44,000 extra that fall into those. So that you would not have those income streams.
But if it did go into housing, of course, it's totally hypothetical, we would be getting property taxes. Right.
Correct. That is correct. It also depends on the type of housing that is built. Right. So yes.
I know you can't compare anything.
Mm-hmm.
And Tim, before we let you get away, can you give us an update on the bonds?
Sure. So the acronym for the bond issue statements is a POS, which is really horrible name, but it's called the preliminary offering statement. So the preliminary offering statement was posted yesterday. And what that does is it essentially sends out to the investment community that we have an issue. This is what the bonds will be, et cetera. So then on the 15th, next Tuesday, we will have a pre-pricing meeting. And then at that meeting, we talk about where the market is for the next day. How's everything looking? Have we had any interest in it? And then on the 16th, we will actually price the bonds, and then we will close on October 23rd.
So when the Fed dropped its interest rate by 0.5%, did that do anything in terms of, did it reflect in what we are going to be able to?
Yes and no. What to Patrick's point, what happens when the Fed drops the rate, it does not have a direct causation to what we are able to sell our bonds for. Typically, what will happen is when the market already builds those rates into the market, and therefore that kind of filters through what we are able to issue at when you add the grade, et cetera. So yes, when they dropped it, that it did help. So the rates are better than when we had even originally looked at them in May. So we're in a better position at this point in time. We just had the AA reaffirmed, which was great news. So we have a really, really strong issue. I don't think we have a lot of competition for Oregon municipalities in that week. So yeah, I'm looking at a very positive, I'm hoping for a very positive outcome. But we will close on the 23rd.
Thanks, Tim.
You bet.
Any further questions? Yep.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have electric vehicle charging stations.
We various times have heard from people that put in electrical charging stations. There have been questions from the public, there's been questions from the dais. But unless we get somewhat serious and have somebody give us some sort of a proposal, it's going to be hard to go ahead and determine what the costs are, what the profits might be, what kind of requirements there would be for the installation to go in. So we were talking to R&W Engineering. They're preparing a proposal for a feasibility study for installing electric vehicle charging stations. Proposal will also include researching rebate and grant opportunities. And this is a starting point of a conversation. But had enough inquiries even from the council that was like, let's find out what we can. So feasibility study.
Do we know how much the electric vehicle charging station at the RV campus used?
We probably do. I don't know it offhand, but we can try to find out.
Kind of curious. It may be outdated too. I don't know.
In the charging stations themselves.
Yeah.
That's whenever I get any correspondence from somebody about the lack of EV stations, they mention how outdated.
That was installed
right
at least 10 years ago, at least 10 years ago.
Yes.
I'm sure it was more like 15. It was a long time ago.
I tried to do some quick research on like best practices as far as citing these things, because other than, making sure there's power nearby, I have no idea of kind of strategies about these kinds of things. So do these companies that do this offer any kind of best practices or?
Part of,
Sorry, it's,
part of the feasibility analysis.
I mean, I'd be just taking a wild guess, saying, we should look at downtown and midtown parking lots. But I don't know. I need more information.
Right, that's what this is intended to do.
We just needed to give him a little bit of direction. He said, are you looking at 2 in Midtown, 2 downtown, just kind of generalization. It doesn't have to be that's what we stick with, but it's a starting point for them to start digging around and looking.
Well, we do have the traffic study that suggested some areas for electrical.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
And we can give him that and just go with that and see what he comes back with. If that's what you guys want to do, we just weren't sure what direction to.
I wouldn't want to contradict that, that's for sure.
Yeah, I received a lot of opposition. That particular portion of it received a lot of opposition, but it's, it did offer some suggested locations.
Yeah, I think that's a good starting point for recommendations. The thing we have to remember is we're taking away parking spaces because they have to be reserved
I mean, that's
charging stations.
question I guess I wanted to ask was, it would help at least me to make a decision, is that if we could find out, well, maybe it would be just as beneficial to have it away from where our coveted parking is.
Yeah.
If somebody finds out where this is, they're gonna go there.
Right.
Or towards a recycle center or.
Yeah.
My concern is that somebody will go ahead and find one of those open and park there and they don't have an electric car.
Yeah, that will happen regardless of where you
Right.
put it.
Or they have an electric car and it takes an hour to charge and they go to the beach for 4 hours or
Yeah.
5 hours. And then it's not available for parking or for charging. So there's just a lot of things that, I have a lot of questions to ask.
And believe
Obviously.
me, those are all things that I've read about these public charging stations, is all of that happens.
Right.
Something we're gonna have to consider.
So there's an enforcement expenditure also
Yeah.
with it.
So those are good comments about, I appreciate the comment, Brandon, that it's like we have to be aware that, that's taking up parking spaces, and so, maybe our premium spaces should not be considered.
Well, once we provide them this information, they'll prepare a proposal for us of what it would take to look at the town, and they're gonna tell us what they can offer us to help figure out all of these things. And then we can make a decision if that's what we want to go with.
And is this a firm we've worked with before?
Yeah, they're actually involved in our projects. We got
I thought
this.
it's-
CETA.
Okay, I thought it sounded familiar.
Yeah, we asked CETA, had they worked with anyone, and they had. So,
So what kind of a timeline?
I'm not sure. I'll give them this information and then it'll go in their queue.
Okay.
And then as soon as we get it, we can report back.
Not much information, but give it to them.
Well, and that's really what they said they needed.
Yeah.
Was just to give us some general ideas of.
Just to get them started.
Just, some general ideas. He said, obviously everyone wants to look at the whole town, but that would cost you a lot of money. So he's like, if you can say, this is kind of the areas we were thinking, he can prepare a quote for us. So we'll send him what was in the TSP.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Done charging?
All charged up.
Okay, so next we have good of the order. Anyone have any items?
I think I have 3.
Okay.
I sound like Lisa, don't I?
Somebody has to.
Well, I was curious about Deanna's question about the food being served over at the surf place. Do you know anything about that?
They started out with was it
So we gave them a one-time permit once for a free barbecue and it was around the 4th of July and they didn't use it. And so they've never had a permit since then, but I know Daniel was working with them on it because one day they were selling kettle corn and he went out there and said, hey, you can't sell kettle corn, and he shut them down. And so after Deanna spoke, I sent a group email to Rob and Daniel and Bruce and just said, hey, this came up, can we chat about it? So we'll be following up with them. They do not have an active permit. He did apply for a permit for a barbecue on the 26th and 27th of October. Daniel was on vacation that day when it came in, so I emailed him and said, hey, where are you at with looking at parking? Because they thought they had more parking than what they do. And even if they did have ability to get a one-time outdoor merchandising permit, there were some concerns about their parking. So Daniel's been working through a lot of different things with them, but I emailed.
I think the food tax question is a good question.
Yeah. With the food tax, I've already talked to Ashley about this. If they were to be selling their food, they would be subject to food tax. So if they were giving it away for free, they would not be subject to food tax.
So they're giving it away for free?
I don't know.
No, they're selling it.
Oh, okay.
So if they're like the day with the popcorn, you know, we shut them down. Popcorn was actually excluded from prepared food tax. So had they been doing popcorn and had a permit, it would not be subject to food tax.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but they're still doing, I mean, I passed them by this weekend. They were still out there.
I followed up with Daniel to find out what's going on, because I'm not here on weekends. I'm not really sure. Deanna did say she filed a complaint. So we'll be following up with him to see what's going
And
on.
I think there's a lot of things there that need to be looked at.
They closed down, this last weekend they were operating. They cleaned it all up, on Monday. So.
But now you said they applied for a permit for October 26th and 27th?
Yeah, I believe it was October 26th, 27th.
Okay.
And when that came in, the first thing I did was email Daniel to say, hey, because when we looked at this initially back around 4th of July, they were talking about doing it where their handicap spot is, but they said, no, we have a handicap spot in the back, but they really don't. It's not a legal handicap spot. And so Daniel was following up with them on some parking concerns as well. So we said, you know, no permit once we realized that. And
The short answer is that we found that they can't do it, but they are doing it on occasion, and we're treating it as a code enforcement issue.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems with that. The other question I had was with something that Michelle mentioned about the gender neutral bathrooms.
Mhm.
Are they included in the, because I know at one time that there was a discussion about including a room in the new bathroom. Or do you know whether there's one being included in there or not? I can't remember. I know the cost of the whole project we had to backtrack on, but
Right.
I don't remember any discussion about whether a gender neutral.
I think that I believe that we did not go with the gender neutral, but I will get an answer for you.
Okay, I'd be curious about that. And then the other thing that I should probably mention to the council is that I sent an invitation out to the 3 city council candidates to visit us at the Coffee with the Counselors on October 21st. I have heard back from Mike. He will be there. Haven't heard back from Eric or Deanna. But I just see it as a casual conversation. I don't foresee it as a formal candidates forum, just a casual conversation. They're there if people want to ask them questions, just like they would ask Lisa and me questions. They would be there to answer them. Get to know you kind of situation. They can join either by in person or by Zoom.
And it would still stay duration of 1 hour.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if somebody brought up other topics, those would be discussed also.
What's that?
Somebody brought up other topics, then.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. But, it would give them a chance to chime in, what they're, if somebody asked me a question about something and Mike or Eric wanted to, say what they wanted to say about it, that would be fine. Yeah, it's just a very casual conversation situation.
Okay, thank you for letting us know. that it for me?
That's it for me.
Anybody else?
So I saw an email about a wedding at Necus Park that says it was a city permitted wedding. And they were parking there and do we know?
They went through a permit and we had a precedent for that use of that facility with the Total One Arts group. They had used it twice for an event. And so we kind of had that and I don't know if I would make the same decision again, but because of the precedent and well, primarily the precedent and then the request that was made, it seemed like it was a feasible thing to do. And so we went with it.
And we did give them restrictions, you know, they were to clean up clean up their garbage, no parking on anything but the blacktop area, no parking on grass. There were conditions placed on that permit. And I did check with the police department to see if anyone complained about it, and there were no complaints received.
I've been reading.
When was the wedding?
Just a couple weeks ago,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I was gonna say, I didn't see.
I did see it. I wondered what was going on there. I mean, I didn't notice, you know.
So they went through a permit
Mhm.
process for a special event.
Right. I think the difference in that location in, say, the downtown park would be that there was the asphalt area to be able to park on, which you wouldn't get an option of parking. And we do have requests frequently for people that want to rope off an area around their house or something because they're having a reception or whatever, and we tell them you can't reserve parking in that. In this case, it was behind the building.
Yeah, and there was a list of requirements for that as well. It was on September 28th.
I'm thinking we probably should not be allowing things there at this point until we figure out what the program is, but.
Yeah.
And that's definitely something we could do. We would just need to be doing it for everybody, including nonprofits who want to reserve it.
Well, considering the
In fact, I
condition of
thought-
the school too, I, it's right next to the school and the school is in a pretty bad condition. I don't know, I'd want to have
There's
anything.
no electricity.
Yeah, there's no electricity.
No bathroom facilities.
Yeah.
Well, and they reserved the park. They reserved Necus Park and they parked on the blacktop. So they weren't using the school.
Right. Well, they couldn't.
Right.
Yeah.
But
It's not suitable.
But it's still, what do they call it?
Attractive nuisance.
Exactly.
But even without the reservation, people could still have done that.
Sure.
So
So it's a park.
it's a park and it's
As
first
long
come.
as they're the first person to come in and get married that day.
But that is definitely something, if you guys want to say no special events issued on that, we're fine. Because Bruce and I talked about that too.
Yeah.
You know.
I think that's probably a good idea.
Yeah, I think it is, especially if construction does get started there.
Oh, well, yeah, if construction was started, then there'd be absolutely nothing, but between now and that point.
So do we need to have that on a voting agenda item?
I think we can do it as a consensus because it's more of a policy right now. But just so including Necus, if anyone says we want to do a special event permit for Necus Park, we're going to say, no, it's just first come, first serve,
Like any park?
like any park.
I think I agree with that.
So you could still have a wedding.
Yeah.
It's okay. It would be first come, first serve, and we would just not allow anyone to park back there. But that would need to include like Mark from Sea Turtles.
Is that parking lot just open?
No, it's gated.
Yeah.
It's a gated community.
And we allowed Mark from Sea Turtles to park back there too.
Who was that?
We allowed Mark from Sea Turtles Forever to park back there once also. I also asked him to fill out a special event permit for future parking, so that way we met all the criteria. It was a courtesy on short notice ones.
part of his reason is let's focus on that part of the beach and have his volunteers that park.
Right.
We would use the same criteria, I assume.
So I guess I'm really confused. What are we asking? What would we allow and what wouldn't we allow?
Yes.
The
helps me a lot.
park would be used on a first come, first served basis. Parking would not be.
But a first come, first served, what kind of first come, first serve event would we be talking about? I mean,
Weddings, soccer.
I believe there's, I can't think of his name, but there's somebody that's gonna be coming to do a beaver, talking about the beaver restoration, where they're just gonna stand outside and talk about it.
Yeah,
And there's
it's Saturday.
Yeah, as a first come, first serve.
yeah, weddings, I guess, is what bothers me.
And that's where we get back to, we have to allow, if we're going to allow one group, we can't.
Why?
Well, there are ways. My concern is we just haven't determined that at this point.
Okay.
When the facilities are finished, we haven't.
Right.
But right now, what is our policy? It's a park. And
I guess it's organized events that bother me right now about it, just because it's hopefully going to be a construction zone eventually, but I know it isn't now.
Yeah, if someone just wants to gather and do their own wedding, do they need a permit?
If you have above 50 people, or if you wanted to have like a canopy or a food truck or any of these other exclusions, things that are not normally allowed, even if you have less than 50 people at that point, but our threshold is 50 people or more, we want you to have a special event permit.
You have to have a special
Yes.
permit.
I mean,
Otherwise, you have 49 people and you don't put up a canopy, you can have a wedding there.
yeah.
And
Or
that's the same. at-
Or park.
Any park, yeah.
No, or park your vehicle.
Or park.
Yeah,
Yes.
the other park. That's the same, the city park, the main city park is the same. All of them. Yeah. We spend a long time on the Parks Committee on special events.
Oh, yeah, I remember that discussion.
Yeah.
And that was a concern that the Parks Committee had, was with the special event process, are you gonna actually increase the events potentially, because now they know,
Right.
I mean, so we had essentially the exact same thing when we allowed Toledo Arts Colony to have their event there before. Only it doesn't make as good an argument against our school project.
And when Andrew did that, we let him know that the only reason we're doing it now is because we're not constructing, he knew that once things move forward, he wouldn't be able to do it again. He hasn't asked since the last event. I think he did 2 there.
Yes, if we say no to one, we should be saying no to the other.
Yeah.
Right, we have to, yeah.
And the reality is that if somebody comes in with 25 people and sets himself up or to get married on the beach or at that park overlooking the beach, unless we happen to come upon it, it's possible that somebody could do it and somebody would see that they had an event. We don't actually go out looking for events.
You don't have to, people will let us know.
Yeah.
Get an email.
Yeah.
And then the beach isn't our control, that's state parks.
Right.
I believe they require permits.
Yeah, they do.
Kind of, but.
Push it.
Every person who calls, because most of my calls for special event permits are on the beach, and I
Right.
send them to
State
state
parks,
parks.
yeah.
And they go through that process.
Everybody clear on that, huh?
No, it's the same thing that we went back and forth before with all of this. It's really unfortunate,
Mhm.
I think.
So there's some time, place and manner policies.
Well, it is a park. I mean,
Right.
it is a city park.
Another option we could say is you can still reserve Nakus Park, but we will just not allow any parking in the back.
Yeah, I think that would be a good
A
idea.
nice happy medium. No, you cannot even, for your event, you cannot use that area for parking.
Well, I think we need to treat it like any other city park. It is a city park right now. I mean, when it becomes a construction zone, that'll be completely different.
Yeah.
And that includes not providing parking for them.
Yeah, not a private lot.
This in no way affects how the food pantry operates.
It's not a special event permit,
Okay,
so I wouldn't think so. And we have had people ask me, people have asked me if they could reserve it just for parking, and we say, no, we don't reserve parking.
And every Wednesday during the food pantry operational hours, we have to tell people, no, these people aren't in line to wait for a parking spot. You're not in line to do that. Occasionally we get donations from those people. We don't let them park, but
So we're back to same rules apply
Yeah.
as every other park, but we're not gonna open up a special parking lot for them.
What about, like, we'll allow people to drive in at the main park to unload and load and things like that, and then we put the bollard back up. So same as that, but nobody can park back there.
right, because nobody's parking, they're dropping things off.
Good with that one?
It seems very consistent to me.
We do put notices on all of our special event permits that you're supposed to pick up your trash, all of those kind of standard things that go with permits.
Right.
evidently an errant bottle of champagne was
Yeah.
left behind.
Right.
What must have been left on,
Was left in front of the gym.
but on the street side?
Yeah.
Okay, because I mean, we patrol it.
Yeah.
During food pantry operations. Okay.
Right, we got it.
Anything else? Gary?
No.
Brandon?
I'm good.
Absolutely not.
Yes.
Ham dinners.
Leave or something?
The ham dinners this weekend. 5 to 8 at the conference center. Anything else?